It was late in the evening when Harold sat down at his desk, the same oak desk he'd used since the 70s. The lamplight spilled over a scattering of coins, each one glinting softly against the wood. He wasn't a professional collector, not really. Just a man with a fascination for old change. He liked the feeling of history between his fingers, the sense that each coin had traveled through countless hands, carried tiny invisible stories from one decade to the next. That night, he opened a small cloth pouch that had been sitting in his drawer for years. Inside were coins from his father's old jar. Pennies, nickels, quarters, dimes, most from the 1960s. He'd been meaning to go through them, mostly for nostalgia. But something about that night felt different. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was the way the coins shimmered in the warm light. He started sorting. Stack by stack, he made neat little piles. Pennies here, nickels there, dimes in a line. And then, right in the middle of it, his hand paused. One dime didn't look quite right. At first glance, it seemed normal. The front showed Roosevelt's familiar profile, the date, 1967, clear beneath his chin. But as Harold turned it, his brow furrowed. The surface had a strange, satiny texture, almost like it was struck differently. The rim wasn't even all the way around. One side looked thicker, the other thinner. And the letters, they seemed doubled, just slightly, as if the die had shifted when it struck. He frowned, reaching for his magnifying glass. Up close, the coin told a different story. The edges were smooth, no reading. A dime with no ridges? That alone made his pulse quicken. He tilted it under the lamp again. The color wasn't quite the same as the other silver dimes from that era. It looked pale, almost like it had been struck on the wrong kind of metal. He checked the weight using a small pocket scale he kept from his hobby days. The display blinked. 2.5 grams. He blinked, checked again. It should have been 2.268. He sat back slowly. That was no minor difference. That was something else entirely. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at the coin. Then he whispered to himself, "You've got to be kidding me." Harold wasn't new to collecting. He'd read enough about mint errors to know what he might be holding. 1967 was a peculiar year for the U.S. Mint. No mint marks were used that year due to production experiments after the coin shortage of the mid-60s. It was a transitional year. Lots of changes, lots of adjustments. And when the mint changes processes, strange things sometimes slip through. He thought back to an article he'd once read about off-metal strikes. Coins struck on the wrong blanks. A dime struck on a planchet meant for a foreign coin, or even on a leftover blank from another denomination. Mistakes like that were almost mythical. They weren't supposed to happen. But when they did, they created legends. He held the coin closer, his breath steadying. Could this dime be one of those? He spent the next few days comparing his coin with images online, photos from auction archives, and mint reports from that year. The deeper he dug, the more incredible it seemed. A few examples of 1967 dimes struck on wrong planchets had been documented, coins that shouldn't exist, each worth thousands. But none of them matched exactly what he had. His was heavier, the edges smoother, the strike cleaner. He decided to bring it to a local numismatics convention that weekend. The hall was buzzing with collectors, tables lined with coins from every era. Harold didn't say much when he arrived. He simply approached one of the expert graders and asked if he could take a look at something. The man examined it under a loupe, silent for almost a full minute. Then he looked up, expression unreadable. "Where did you get this?" Harold explained the story, his father's jar, the sorting, the strange details. The man handed it back carefully. "You might want to have this authenticated. This looks like a 1967 Roosevelt dime struck on a silver planchet that wasn't supposed to exist anymore." "That's a very rare." "Silver," Harold repeated. "But they stopped making silver dimes in '64. "Exactly," the man said quietly. "And that's what makes this so interesting." A week later, Harold mailed the coin to a professional grading service. The wait was excruciating. Every day he wondered if he was imagining things, if maybe it was just a coincidence, a bit of discoloration, a trick of weight. But when the package finally returned, the moment he saw the encapsulated coin, his doubts vanished. The label read, 1967 Roosevelt dime, struck on 90% silver planchet, mint error, MS-65. For a long while he couldn't move. He just stared at it, the words sinking in slowly. Somehow, a leftover silver blank from pre-1965 had made its way into the mint presses in 1967, been struck with Roosevelt's design, and released into circulation. And by pure chance, that dime ended up in his father's jar. He started making calls. Collectors, auction houses, experts. Everyone he spoke to reacted with the same stunned excitement. The coin wasn't just rare, it was one of the rarest transitional errors ever found. The first private offer came in at $28,000. Then another at $40,000. He turned them all down. Word spread fast. Photos circulated online, numismatic publications picked it up, and by the time it reached the hands of a major auction house, the buzz was electric. The night of the auction, the atmosphere felt charged. Even the auctioneer's voice carried an extra edge of anticipation. The bidding started at $20,000, then $30,000. Within seconds, it leapt to $50,000, then $60,000. The crowd murmured, the rhythm of numbers climbing like a heartbeat. When the bidding hit $64,000, Harold thought it might stop there. But it didn't. Two determined collectors, one from Texas and one from New York, pushed it higher. $70,000, $85,000, $100,000. The room grew quiet as the final bid came in. $132, $500. The hammer fell. Sold. The applause was soft, respectful, but Harold could barely hear it. His hands trembled slightly. A dime his father had once dropped into a jar, thinking it was just another 10 cents, had just become one of the most valuable dimes ever sold. Reporters wanted to interview him. Articles appeared in coin magazines titled things like, "The Accidental Fortune in a Family Jar." One even called it the ghost of the silver era. But Harold wasn't interested in fame. He kept one photo of the dime in a frame by his desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder how easily miracles can hide in the ordinary. He liked to think about his father sometimes, the man who'd tossed that coin into a jar without a second thought. He wondered how many times his dad might have held it, jingling loose change in his pocket, never realizing the tiny fortune that slipped through his hands. Even after selling it, Harold never stopped looking at coins. Every time he got change, he'd study each piece, tracing the edges, tilting it toward the light, searching for the next impossible mistake. The 1967 silver planchet dime became legendary in collecting circles. People whispered about it at shows, posted about it in forums, shared grainy photos and theories. Some believed a small batch of leftover blanks had been accidentally mixed into production. Others thought a mint worker might have deliberately tested old planchets. No one ever found proof. All that remained was the dime itself, a shining, silver ghost from a year that wasn't supposed to have any. Over the years, it inspired countless collectors to start looking through their change again. One article wrote, "If you think every dime looks the same, think again. Because even in a system designed for perfection, errors slip through. And those errors remind us that nothing man-made is ever flawless." Sometimes Harold would smile when people asked if he missed the coin. "No," he'd say, "because I didn't lose it. I found what it meant." And what it meant was simple patience, attention, wonder. A lesson that in the smallest, simplest things, entire stories can hide. The story of the 1967 error dime is more than a numismatic curiosity. It's a symbol of how the past never really disappears. How something from an old era, something that should have been gone, can find its way into the present, unnoticed until someone with curiosity and care takes a closer look. There's something magical about that. Because maybe, somewhere right now, another coin just like it is sitting quietly in a drawer, waiting for someone to find it. And when they do, maybe they'll feel that same rush, the disbelief, the excitement, the realization that a 10-cent coin can change everything. That's the real story of collecting. Not the money, not the auctions, but the moment when you hold a small piece of metal and realize it shouldn't exist. And yet, somehow, it does. A coin that was never supposed to be. A story that never gets old. You've probably seen thousands of Roosevelt dimes over the years. They're small, ordinary, and almost invisible in their familiarity. You hand one to a cashier, drop a few in a tip jar, and never think twice. But every once in a while, one of those tiny silver coins carries a secret so valuable it could change everything you think you know about pocket change. That's exactly the case with one of the rarest and most mysterious dimes in American history, the 1975 US dime error. A coin that should have been just another dime, but became worth more than $120,000. Now, you might wonder, how could something so small, so common, be worth more than some cars, even small houses? It all comes down to one simple, unbelievable fact. A few 1975 Roosevelt dimes were struck without something every coin is supposed to have: the mint mark. In 1975, the U.S. Mint was busy preparing for the country's bicentennial celebrations. Special designs for quarters, half dollars, and dollars were being readied for the following year. But the dime, the smallest and simplest of the group, was supposed to stay the same. The San Francisco Mint was producing proof sets, beautiful mirror-finish coins made for collectors. Every single proof coin from San Francisco had one thing in common: a small S mint mark, just below the date on the front. That little letter told the world exactly where the coin came from. Except, somehow, a handful of them didn't have it. A single missing letter. That's all it took to create one of the most sought-after modern coins ever made. A simple oversight during production, an obverse die that had never been punched with the S, led to the creation of just a couple of 1975 Roosevelt dimes without a mint mark. They looked identical to ordinary coins, but they weren't. When the first no S dime surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. At first, people thought it had to be fake. A prank, maybe, or a damaged coin where the mint mark had somehow worn away. But it wasn't. Experts examined it under magnification and confirmed it. There was no sign of removal, no tampering. The die itself had been used without the mint mark ever being there in the first place. It was a true minting error. The excitement was immediate. Collectors began scouring their proof sets, checking every 1975 dime with trembling hands, hoping to find that blank space where the S should be. For most, there was nothing. But for a lucky few, lightning struck. A coin that should have been worth 10 cents suddenly carried a price tag of tens of thousands of dollars. The first auction was modest at first, the bidding starting in the hundreds. But as collectors realized just how few existed, the numbers began to rise. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. By the end of the auction, the final hammer price left everyone stunned: $56,000. For a dime. And as the years went by, the value only grew. One of the finest examples ever found, gleaming and perfectly preserved, sold for a staggering $123,200. It's incredible to think about. Two small coins, both missing a mint mark, both now among the most famous modern rarities ever struck by the U.S. Mint. Their story has become legend. But how could it happen? Proof coins are struck with extraordinary care, under close inspection, and packaged before leaving the mint. Every die is checked, every coin polished. For one to slip through without a mint mark seems almost impossible. And yet, that's what makes it so fascinating. When the obverse die was being prepared for the San Francisco Mint, it was supposed to be hand-punched with the S before use. Somehow, one of those dies missed that crucial step. It was installed in the press, used for a short run, and only later discovered. But by then, the coins it struck were already sealed into proof sets and sent out to collectors across the country. That's how these ultra-rare no-S dimes ended up hidden among ordinary coins. And here's the thing. No one knows exactly how many exist. Some believe there may only be 2 or 3 genuine 1975 no-S proof dimes in the world. 2 are confirmed and graded by major coin authentication services. But beyond that, it's all speculation. There could be one more still sitting unnoticed in a box somewhere. A tiny fortune waiting to be discovered. Collectors and treasure hunters have been searching for decades. They've opened sealed proof sets, examined them under bright lights, held their breath every time the date came into focus. Most of the time, they see the familiar S and sigh in disappointment. But there's always that small flicker of hope. What if? What if the next one is the missing coin? That's the magic of the 1975 dime. It's not just about money. It's about mystery. A single missing letter has turned it into a symbol of the impossible. A reminder that even the most controlled process in the world can still make mistakes, and those mistakes can become priceless. And for those who find them, it's not just financial reward. It's the thrill of discovery. Imagine holding a coin in your hand, realizing that you've found something only 2 people in history have ever seen before. That feeling of disbelief, that heartbeat pounding faster as you check it again and again just to be sure. It's not just a coin. It's a moment of pure chance, captured forever in metal. For collectors, this dime stands as a perfect example of what makes numismatics so addictive. It's a hunt that never ends. Even after decades, there's still the possibility that another one could be out there, tucked away in a forgotten collection or resting quietly in a family safe. People have inherited old proof sets from parents and grandparents, unaware that a 6-figure treasure could be hiding inside. So what should you look for? If you ever come across a 1975 proof set, especially one with a dime that looks unusually sharp or mirror-like, take a closer look. Use a magnifying glass or even a good phone camera. Focus on the date. Just below it, you should see the S. If that space is completely blank, you might have something extraordinary. But don't rush. Many counterfeit coins have appeared over the years. People have tried to remove mint marks or create fakes, hoping to cash in on the legend. That's why authentication is everything. Only certified examples are accepted by serious collectors and auction houses. The 1975 No-S dime has inspired generations of treasure hunters. Every time one appears at auction, it makes headlines. Even collectors who'll never own one still talk about it, still dream of finding one. It's a symbol of what makes this hobby so exciting. The idea that the next great discovery could come from anywhere, even a dusty box of coins forgotten for decades. But there's another layer to this story. The 1975 No-S dime isn't the only missing mint mark coin to exist. A few years earlier, similar mistakes happened with the 1968, 1970, and 1971 proof dimes. Each of those became valuable in their own right, but none reached the legendary status of the 1975. That's because by 1975, the mint's processes were far more refined. Mistakes like this weren't supposed to happen anymore. That makes this dime not just rare, but almost miraculous. And it's not only proof coins that collectors look for. Even circulation strikes, those made for everyday use, can have fascinating errors. Off-center strikes, double dies, and wrong planchet errors can also command high prices. But the 1975 No-S proof dime stands apart because it's both a product of precision and imperfection, a perfect coin missing something essential. Today, both confirmed examples sit safely in collections, preserved and protected, their values climbing with every passing year. They've become legends of the modern mint era, proof that even in a system built on precision, there's always room for surprise. Think about it, billions of dimes struck over decades and only a handful with this specific flaw. That's what makes the story so powerful. Somewhere in the endless ocean of coins, 2 tiny islands of perfection turned imperfection became treasures worth over $100,000 each. And maybe that's what people love most about stories like this. The idea that treasure doesn't always come in gold bars or ancient relics. Sometimes it's something as small as a dime, something so ordinary that you could have held it 100 times and never realized it. So the next time you're going through old coins or you see a proof set at a garage sale, take a moment. Look closely. Focus on the details others might miss. Because somewhere, maybe still hidden in a drawer, another one of those legendary 1975 dimes might be waiting to be found. And if you're the one who finds it, you'll be holding not just a coin, but a piece of minting history. A mistake so rare it became priceless. That's the magic of the 1975 dime. A small coin with a big secret. A 10-cent piece worth as much as $123,000. A reminder that even in a world built on precision, perfection sometimes slips, and that's where the real treasures hide. You ever hold a dime and think, this thing barely matters? It's just 10 cents, small, light, forgettable. You toss it in a jar, lose it in your car seat, maybe even ignore it when you drop one. But what if one of those ordinary dimes wasn't ordinary at all? What if one of them, one tiny coin minted back in 1983, could be worth more than a house payment? Or even more than a luxury car? Because that's exactly what happened. There's a 1983 US dime out there. A regular Roosevelt dime that somehow came out of the mint with a strange, rare error. And that one mistake turned what should have been a 10-cent coin into something worth between $48,000 and $110,300. Yeah. You heard that right. The wild part? It wasn't supposed to happen. To really understand how this dime became a legend, you have to picture the mint back in the early 1980s. Machines roaring, metal blanks pouring through feeders, dies striking thousands of times per minute. Every movement precise, automated, relentless. Billions of coins being made, each one expected to look identical. But perfection? It's an illusion. No machine is perfect. And in 1983, just a few tiny imperfections slipped through, little mistakes that would go unnoticed by everyone. Except the few people who looked close enough to see something extraordinary. A handful of those dimes came out wrong. Some were struck off-center. Roosevelt's portrait shifted too far to the side. The rim uneven, the date almost cut off. Others were broad-struck, meaning they were struck without the collar that normally shapes the edge, leaving the coin flatter and stretched out, the ridges on the rim missing. And then, there were the true treasures, the double dies. Those are the ones that collectors dream about. They happen when the die itself, the metal stamp that impresses the design, shifts slightly during production, leaving a second, faint image of the design. So when the die strikes again, the letters and numbers look doubled, almost ghostly. And the result is pure magic to collectors. One man in Pennsylvania found one of these dimes while rolling change for the bank. He noticed something strange under the lamp on his kitchen table. The letters in Liberty seemed to shimmer, almost like a shadow beneath the surface. He set it aside, thinking maybe it was just wear or a bad strike. But something about it felt different. Later that week, he brought it to a local coin dealer who looked through a magnifying glass and froze. Then he looked again. "This isn't damage," the dealer said quietly. "This is a double die." The man's heart started racing. A few months later, after grading and authentication, that coin went up for auction. The hammer dropped at $48,000. $48,000. For a dime he almost deposited at the bank. And that wasn't even the highest result. In another auction a few years later, a perfectly preserved 1983 broad-strike dime. Flawless surface, bright luster, dramatic error, sold for a staggering $110,300. Collectors went crazy. Everyone wanted to know how such an obvious mint mistake could have escaped detection. How could something so wrong survive in a system designed for perfection? That's the thing about minting. It's a blend of precision and chaos. The dies are replaced constantly, sometimes multiple times a day. The blanks, called planchets, are fed by the thousands into press hoppers. The collar that shapes the coin's rim sits in perfect synchronization with each strike. But if even one of those components slips for half a second, a die shift, a collar misfire, a wrong planchet fed in by accident, the machine keeps running. And one tiny mistake becomes immortal. Most of those coins get caught by inspectors before they ever reach circulation. But sometimes one doesn't. It slides into a pile of perfect coins, gets bagged, shipped, rolled, and spent. And just like that, an error worth tens of thousands of dollars ends up in someone's pocket change. That's what happened with these 1983 dimes. They weren't supposed to survive. They weren't supposed to exist. But a few did, and they've been setting records ever since. Now, what makes the 1983 error special isn't just that they're rare, it's how they look. Doubling on Roosevelt's face gives it this haunting, mirrored profile. The letters around the edge show crisp, visible doubling under a magnifying glass. Broad-struck examples are almost surreal, stretched, slightly warped, but still sharp and bright. Wrong planchet examples, where the dime was accidentally struck on a blank meant for another denomination, are even more mind-blowing. Those coins have a completely different weight and tone when you drop them. They sound off. Collectors have documented only a handful of these in top condition. And that's what pushes the prices through the roof. Because when something's this rare, and it looks this striking, people don't just buy it for the metal, they buy it for the story. And what a story it is. One man finds a dime that looks a little strange. Another collector spends a few hours searching coin rolls from the bank and suddenly stumbles across one with no ridged edge. Someone else buys an old coin jar at a yard sale, empties it out on the table, and spots a shine that doesn't match the rest. Every discovery feels like lightning in a bottle. And that's why collectors can't get enough of this coin, because it reminds them that even in modern times, you can still find treasure in the most ordinary places. You don't need to dig up ancient hoards or search old estates. You just need to look closely at what's already in your hand. If you want to check your own 1983 dimes, here's what to watch for. First, look at the rim. If it's uneven, wider on one side, or missing its ridges entirely, that could be a broad strike. Then, check the lettering, especially the word liberty and the motto "In God We Trust." If the letters look doubled or have a faint outline beneath them, you might have a doubled die. Finally, weigh the coin if you can. A normal dime should weigh 2.27 grams. If it's heavier or lighter, that could mean it was struck on the wrong planchet, and that's where big value lives. The key is condition. The cleaner the surfaces, the sharper the details, the higher the grade, the bigger the payout. Professional graders like PCGS and NGC confirm whether it's a genuine mint error, and once it's certified, the value skyrockets. But beyond the money, there's something poetic about these coins. Think about it. A dime that cost less than a cent to make, created by accident, becomes something that changes someone's life. It's a story of imperfection, of randomness, and of how the smallest mistake can become something extraordinary. One collector once said, "Error coins are proof that even the mint can have a bad day, and that's good news for the rest of us." He's right, because every error coin carries a trace of that moment. A glimpse of when the system slipped just enough to let something unique into the world. The 1983 dime is one of those stories frozen in metal. It's a reminder that perfection isn't what makes something valuable. It's uniqueness. The misalignments, the shifts, the doubling, those are what give it character. And the mystery isn't over. Experts believe more of these dimes might still be out there, hidden in drawers, tucked into jars, rolling around in pockets. After all, coins travel slowly. It can take decades for one to surface. Someone might still find another one tomorrow, completely by chance. Maybe you.so next time you get change back, take a second. Don't rush to drop those dimes into a jar. Turn them under the light, look closely, pay attention to the details. That tiny coin could be the key to a story that's been waiting 40 years to be told. Because in 1983, the mint didn't just make dimes. It made a mistake, and that mistake turned into a miracle. And maybe, just maybe, one of those miracles is sitting in your pocket right now.